the space between God and me, where he's a white mist on the left and I'm a white mist on the right, maybe that they did actually sever my brain into left and right. That may be it. Well, if it weren't for miracles and study and science and a lot of effort, that would be unhealable, and I wouldn't be able to communicate with God. Alright.
President Biden's mission to have 70% of American adults with at least one shot of vaccination by the 4th of July is facing some headwinds. As of today, 63% have received at least one dose. And if we stay on the current trajectory, the U.S. will fall about 6 million people short of that goal.
So we wanted to talk to some of the millions of people who remain hesitant or resistant to getting the vaccine to find out why. So as you're about to hear, they have many reasons. Here's your pulse of the people. Show of hands, do any of you worry about getting COVID? No, you don't. Okay, so Jennifer, you're a really interesting place to start because you are a registered nurse. And so You, as I understand it, worked in a COVID unit. You saw the worst of the worst, and I would think that you would want to get the vaccine as soon as it's available, but I know that you have hesitated.
Basically, I just want some more research. We've been seeing a lot in the hospital, like just between, the patients and the employees that I work with, we're seeing a lot of adverse reactions after Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. So it makes me a little leery because you don't know, until you take it if you're going to get one of those reactions or not.
Obviously, you know, because you're in the medical field, that they have researched these things, and millions of people have gotten them without adverse reactions.
They don't have the research to support it or deny it. I mean, you can't verify either way right now because there's not enough proper studies done to really show it. And I think we need a few more years, at least a couple more years, to see any long-term effects.
Diana, I want to move on to you, and you have an autoimmune disease. So tell me, most COVID patients fully recover, but not all. Experts believe at least 10% of patients become COVID long haulers who suffer severe symptoms indefinitely after diagnosis. Heidi Ferrer, a well-known Hollywood screenwriter, was one of them. After fighting the virus for more than a year and experiencing endless setbacks, she died by suicide at the end of May. Her husband, Nick Gutta, joins us now. Nick, we're so sorry for your loss. I really appreciate you being here to share Heidi's story with us, and I know that that's what she wanted. I mean, the reason you're doing this interview is to get her story out, and so just tell us what her year was like and what her symptoms were like in her daily life.
Well, it started with excruciating, unexplained pain in her feet that we first thought was plantar fasciitis and turned out to be the equivalent of diabetic nerve pain, although she wasn't a diabetic, which made her bedridden by last June. And it followed incredibly difficult digestive issues for months, overall body aches, racing heart rate. When she would just get out of bed to walk, her heart would go from 80 to 130 beats in 15 seconds. And then neurological tremors that started in the last month that were very scary and also completely disrupted her sleep. She had like an internal vibration in her body that she could feel but nobody else could see, but kept her from sleeping. So for the last month she barely slept more than an hour at a time.
It sounds horrible. I mean, it sounds like a living hell, obviously. And this went on for more than a year for her?
It started 13 months ago, yeah.
Were doctors ever able to determine or give you guys any explanation for why she had such a debilitating case?
No. I mean, in the beginning, the tests were so inaccurate, the early tests were so inaccurate that, nobody would even say she had it. They came up with a bunch of other reasons, and none of them seemed accurate. And she did get some more advanced tests later on that actually led her to be referred to the long-haul COVID clinic at Cedars-Sinai, and the letter for a referral, ironically, arrived the day before she took her life. That's how hard it is to get people to pay attention to people with long-haul COVID if they didn't get a positive test in the first, 8 weeks.
This disease, this illness is so cruel, it is so unpredictable, and I know that Heidi talked about that in her blog, and there were times during the past year, even this year, that she believed that she had turned a corner. And so one of her blog posts, January 25th, she said, "I have positive news. I'm cautiously optimistic that I'm still improving slowly but surely every month. I've had over 40 scary and even crippling long COVID symptoms in July. Now I'm down to a few frustrating ones, but so much better." And then what happened?
She was improving. She decided to get the Moderna vaccine March 8th, which she had been a lot of long haulers felt could improve their symptoms. In her case, it had just the opposite effect, and I want to make clear I'm 100% pro-vaccine. I'm vaccinated, my son is vaccinated, but in her case, it set her back to where she was last July, and also led to the neurological tremors that were very scary, almost like Parkinsonian tremors that kept her up late at night, and made sleeping impossible. And then there was that last month where she had brain fog that really came on very hard at the end, and made even reading a book almost impossible to retain information. She loved to read. I've had 500 books on her Kindle, and I think that almost was the final straw for her when she couldn't even enjoy the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you've talked about that when it deprives.
He's saying his wife was a COVID long hauler, that her illness was severe, with severe symptoms for 12 or 13 months. And then she started to feel better, and she wrote on her blog or something about that she feels so much better. Her symptoms were waning a lot. And she had, he said, the Moderna vaccine. And it set her back to where she was the previous July. And she killed herself.
She was going to lose the ability to walk, end up in a wheelchair, not be able to bathe herself. And based on the video she left for us, she indicated she wanted to go out while she still had some, dignity, I guess. It's the best way I can explain it. And they'd asked her to hang on.
Nick, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this horrible illness robbed you of her and robbed obviously all of her friends and the community that she was in. And so she wanted you to get her story out. What's your message to our viewers?
Well, the message to people with long haul is hang on. I believe that help is on the way, but we need our government to step in now and fund the research right away and provide mental health support services for people like her. I'm in contact with one of her friends on one of her support groups who told me the other day literally 15 people messaged her separately within 24 hours to say they were thinking about taking the same route Heidi took. And that's just another person suffering with COVID who has to act as a de facto suicide counselor. And she said to me, I'm not trained to do it. And she's battling herself. With this, the Washington government needs to step in now. If 3 million people out there have long-haul COVID, as you said, 1 out of 10 people, there's a tsunami coming. And my wife was one of the first, unfortunately, and there probably will be more, but we need to pay attention. And it's not just about suicide, it's about people re-entering the workforce. This is an economic issue. We've trained people, nurses.
There are an estimated 3 million people in the United States with long-term COVID, or maybe the world. But, I forget, I missed some.
Firemen, first responders, essential workers who are not going to be able to go back to their jobs because they are exhausted, they're bedridden.
He's saying that we're going to have a tidal wave of long-term COVIDs if there isn't something done, if the government doesn't step in and do something. We're going to have I forget the word he used.
As my wife said to me many times, I don't know what I would do if I was a single mother. I don't know how I could function. I as the husband, I had to pick up all the slack of cooking, cleaning, shopping, and I was happy to do it. I said to her every day, you on the couch is enough for us. You on the couch, just hang on. And I wish that the medical community would have taken on all COVID more seriously early on. And maybe the therapeutics would have been here, and maybe she'd still be here.
Nick, we hear your call.
garbage peddlers are trying to red scare you about subversive Marxist ideas and stuff. That's right, despite a global pandemic that we're still trying to get under control, a rise in violent crime and mass shootings, a looming debt limit deadline that could lead to a, quote, absolutely catastrophic hit to our economy, according to the Treasury Secretary, crumbling infrastructure all over the country, and continued attacks on our elections from inside and outside the U.S., Fox News' Laura Ingraham would like to speak to the manager about critical race theory. Right-wing pundits and lawmakers are just beside themselves over the news that there is one elective class at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point that explores the idea that racism exists in America at an institutional level. How dare it? After foaming at the mouths over this atrocity, they pointed their pitchforks at General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a man who served at multiple command and staff positions in 8 divisions and special forces over nearly 40 years, military, because that's the guy who would tell how to do his job. But that's just what Laura Ingraham did on Fox this week, as Milley testified before the House Services Committee. Amidst an alarming rise of extremism inside the armed forces, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is conducting stand-downs or conversations with service members about racism and extremist groups. It's a reaction in part to the January 6th storming of the Capitol. Around 15% of those arrested for their roles in the insurrection have former military ties. Milley linked racism and extremism to the attacks on the Capitol and defended the notion that the military should explore and combat the racism and extremism within its ranks. He also took particular umbrage with the idea that doing so makes the military woke, as some easily offended right-wingers have complained. I've read Mao Zedong, said Milley. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? The answer, of course, is nothing. There's nothing wrong with wanting to learn about and address the racism and the extremism that is corrupting some members of the military. Unless, of course, you're a right-wing pundit or rising star in Congress, and the new grift is pretending that racism is real and learning stuff about it is, communism. Laura Ingraham slammed General Milley for spreading, quote, far-left, Marxist, racist ideology and choosing to indulge the radical whims of Democrats. She also questioned the idea that extremism, the kind that prompted members of QAnon, the Proud Boys, other white pride groups to storm the Capitol in hopes of overturning a Democratic election, well, she wonders if it even exists. And to top it off, she floated a baseless conspiracy theory that the real motive of folks like Milley is a religious witch hunt. We're sending our tax dollars to this military, she says, in an attempt to weed out so-called extremists, which just means conservative evangelicals as far as I can tell. This deranged paranoia about critical race theory and learning stuff is now a full-on hallucination for some on the right. Florida man Matt Gaetz, a member of Congress who has never served in the military, took courageously to Twitter to say of General Milley, with generals like this, it's no wonder we've fought considerably more wars than we've won. We, sir? Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and currently serves with the Air National Guard, responded to Gates' inane schoolyard taunts by saying, "Thank you for your service as an armchair general in the faux outrage army." Ouch. As silly and unserious as folks like Ingraham and Gates sound, Milley's words at the hearing were, in fact, important. He said that these attacks on the military over its attempts to root out racism are not only offensive, but affecting the discipline and cohesion of this military. In other words, concerns our national security. What is so dangerous and threatening about, as Millie put it, studying some theories that are out there? What are people like Ingram so afraid of? The answer is probably nothing. These folks are just pulling another scam on their viewers and supporters, getting them frothy and angry at yet another boogeyman that isn't real. Just for clicks, just for ratings, just for dollars and votes. It's gross, but I'm sure there's plenty more of that to come. What's next? Woke banning? McCarthy-esque hearings? I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.
Oh shit.
Gold's been around 5,000 years. Bitcoin's been around, only a few years, about 10 years. My name is Pierre Kim. I'm a senior portfolio manager here at Oxford. Everybody asks the same thing: is Bitcoin or gold better? There's a great tweet written by Peter Schiff, who's a major gold bug, and I'll read you a quote. He says, "The mainstream financial media really wants the public to buy Bitcoin, and is doing everything it can to promote it. On the other hand, the media doesn't want anyone buying gold. Gold is a threat to the fiat monetary system. Bitcoin is only a threat to the people who buy it." So if you'd like to learn more about investing in gold, ask for Pierre Kim at Oxford.
You're going to see prices continue to move up, and it's going to be on the things that we consume.
The economy, at least in the short term, is overheating.
There's almost probably too much spending. And the thing to pay attention to is really the chairman.
Powell is very optimistic that we are going to get a robust labor market recovery, that inflation will be contained.
He's just been saying essentially, wait, look, and we'll respond if we need to, but there ain't no inflation problem.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
Record highs going into the weekend from New York City for our audience. Good morning, good morning. Bloomberg Surveillance alongside Lisa Abramowitz. I'm Jonathan Farrow. Tom Keene is out of the building. Equity futures right now are 5 on the S&P. We advanced to 42.61 on the S&P 500. Lisa, we have a deal down in DC.
And this actually came as a surprise. And not only did we get a deal, but it was slightly larger than what people had expected. $579 billion for infrastructure, traditional brick and mortar. The question now is, can they get it through? Can they get 10 Republican senators on board?
And in the bond market, you know what we've got? Tumbleweed. Yields did absolutely nothing off the back of this, Lisa. Your thoughts?
That to me is interesting because frankly, a lot of people have been saying this has been priced in, and yet this is significant. The fact that they're actually getting something done, it seems feasible. It is larger than what some people expected, and Democrats are still talking about additional spending. Yet nothing. What is this?
What do you make of that, Sarah?
You know, John, some of the interesting conversations we had yesterday is the market not pricing it in, at least from the equity markets. And perhaps maybe if they say that the smart money is in bonds, something more sinister going on. But one of my key questions yesterday are what are the tailwinds of further fiscal stimulus? Maybe the pressure just takes off monetary stimulus. And then what does it mean for the headwinds of the markets? That, well, how do we pay for it? There are no taxes being raised in this plan, so the equity markets likely that portion.
Will it pass at all? Will it fall apart? Lisa, we have to discuss that because this is just one bill. The $579 billion in tandem with this will be a Democrat-only bill. That's where things get complicated.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that it looks less likely. I will just note that if you take a look at the bond action, it's a flattening yield curve, ongoing, with 2-year yields continuing to climb higher. So perhaps this will reduce inflation in the short run, but over the long term, the balance of energy in Washington, D.C., at least according to the bond market, seems to be toward less fiscal spending as the economy recovers.
Fiscal, maybe next 3 hours on Bloomberg TV radio. Looking forward to that. Equity futures 42.60 on the S&P 500. Market shaping up as follows. We advance 4, call it 5, up a little more than a tenth of 1%. Yields, as Lisa points out, here we are, sat at 150. We settle around 149. The FX market 119.41, positive about a tenth of 1%. That right there, Lisa, just a little bit of a stronger euro in the mix this morning.
You know, it's interesting because we saw the dollar strengthen. That was a knee-jerk reaction after a fiscal support bill seemed to gain steam and gain support on both sides yesterday. It's been reversed, which I find quite interesting. Meanwhile,
their stupor. We'll look at the inflation data that's coming out in about 2.5 hours. We're going to be getting personal income, personal spending, and the key metric here, core PCE. This is the PCE deflator. This is the metric that Federal Reserve officials look at most closely. They have a target of 2%. It is expected to come in at or around 3.5% year over year. Transitory. Expect them all to say this, and there's plenty of Fed speakers who are going to get to this. Watch the income actually come down.
God says my brain might be using up a lot of sodium to heal, and that's why my sodium levels are so low. Consistently low. Right, well, last time I was tested, about a week ago it wasn't low. It was like 1 or 2 points lower than the lower range, but earlier it's been more. So. I'm going to stop recording and upload this.